We are always carrying this experiencing structure, which is what we call the me. So when we look at any desire or fear, it's coming out of this experience structure that's built using memory. So we are always, every time we are going through any experience, we are adding it to this notion of the me, which has many identities and through which we are adding more and more experiences. And the experiences are always craving for more because they want to constantly recharge themselves. Each experience is just an energy field, and each identity is also an energy. And these identities, they are always constantly looking to take over the body, take over the thought structure, so that they can have that experience again. And then they go back into some kind of background and then they come back again. So this seems to be the cycle that is there all the time. And that is why there is always the desire for experiencing the same thing over and over again. If you listen to a piece of music, then after some time, there is a desire to listen to it again, because the desire to listen to it again comes out of the need to recharge that identity. So every time we give in to a desire to experience something again, we are only re energizing a particular identity within that has been built through time, built through memory. And then there is therefore also the fear of end of all experiencing, which is what is the fear of death. So we, because through time, we built all these experiences and identities to that are built based on the experiences, we project that there will come a time when these experiences won't happen, and therefore there is the fear that all experiencing will end. And that's why there is the fear of death as well, which is said to be the root of all fears. So we want to then either continue experiencing, or we want to, on the other side, if we are tired of the experiences, we want to somehow stop the experiencing and have something else. In either case, the core fallacy is that we are imagining ourselves to be the identity that is having the experience. So there is the natural flow of events that happen, various things happen, and this includes all our perceptions, all our thoughts, actions, all the rest. But the most important pointer is there is nobody separate from those happenings, experiencing those happenings. It is the false separation that creates either desire or fear, either the need to have it more or even being tired of having it. As long as we separate ourselves from experience, we are having this duality between who I am and life itself that is flowing. And the flow of life, therefore, either seems to be something that I want to have more and more, or in some cases I don't want to have. But in either case, the separation between I and life is at the root of both tendencies. So, what's the most important pointer with self inquiry is that there is no real separation between life and someone having it. There is just life. The entity we imagine to be having the experience is only put together by memory and by thought. Right now, we are perceiving things and we are listening and we are speaking, and whatever is happening, it's all happening by the same divine intelligence that's making everything happen. There is no separate individual entity at all. And that is the most important thing to recognize, because as long as we imagine there to be an individual here, then that's the seed for all desires, including the desire for liberation. So when we desire liberation, we are desiring from the ground of what is false. That which does not exist in reality seeks liberation, and it is the same entity that was seeking other experiences before and fearing the end of experiencing and all the rest. So the core question, therefore, is who is this entity? That's another way of recognizing the falsity of it. So if we, as in one of the verses, Ramana Maharishi says, it is like a ghost that seems to be there as long as we don't look at it. But when we turn around and ask, look for the ghost rather, ask who this is, it vanishes. So that turning around and looking for the ghost is the whole process of self inquiry. The I falls, he says. That's why the I that is imagined to be there falls, and that is true inquiry. He says, Ai patatyaham nija vicharanam. Patati means it falls. Aham is I. Ai patatyaham nija vicharanam. In Upadesha Saram. Nija vicharanam, the true inquiry, is the fall of the I. That's what that one line is the summary of inquiry. He says again, Ai patatyaham nija vicharanam. The I falls down when one inquires if there is an I, where is this I? So the experience structure we build as me, which is based on the separative sense of existence, I, as ego, is the one that is accumulating various identities, various experiences, and then constantly seeking more and more of those experiences in many cases, and in some cases seeking less and less of the experiences. But in either case, the commonality is the false sense of I that is either wanting or either tired of experiences. But even being tired of experiences, it can become nihilistic if we don't recognize that the very I who is tired of it is also the false I. So, the key question, therefore, is looking into who is it that is having any commentary on life itself. Life flows in its own beautiful way, and that beauty cannot be judged in any way. It can, beauty is not to say it's always pleasant. Sometimes it can be ferocious, sometimes it can be gentle, sometimes it's very high, sometimes it's very low. Life goes in so many ways, but that whole movement of life is one unitary movement of the divine energy. And the false separation from that, which comments on it, which likes it or dislikes it, which craves it or runs away from it, that separative movement is only an imagination, is a fiction. So if we really look carefully, then we can see that that is only another thought we are having. And that's why its nature constantly changes. Sometimes it's very attached to a particular experience and wants more and more, and then another experience comes, and then one says life is tiring. So this constant back and forth is all happening from the standpoint of the, not of the life itself, but of the one who is commenting on the life. And that commentary on the life is from this fictional separative identity. And so if we look at it carefully, we can see that that separative identity is itself just another thought. It's thought that is, of course, very ossified and seems very powerful. It is coming forth from the heart. It is not a thought in the sense of just like a thought that rises about something in the brain, but it is thoughts are of different nature. Fear is also a kind of thought, but it's felt in the body, and so on. So emotions are also a form of thought, but they are not felt, they are much more closer, let's say. They are not just an objective thought in the brain, but they seem much more charged and near. So, and the nearest of all is this thought, the sense of identity, but it's still a thought. It's still something that comes and goes. Therefore, to look and to recognize that the very experiencing structure called the me, which is based on this separative existence I, is false, is non existent. There is life flowing, and life is flowing perfectly, however, it's flowing. Then there is nobody to be separate from what's happening to comment on it, but there is just the flow of life, and the ground from which it flows is the empty fullness. That's the best way to put it. Normally, people debate between whether it's emptiness or fullness, but it's actually both, because it's empty of any identity, and being empty of all identities, it is full in that it holds everything that can never be verbalized or known in the sense of knowledge, but it can be simply the state of being, the very sense of being when there is no separative identity. So we don't have to, therefore, make any effort to recognize that. We only have to recognize the falsity of the separative I. Because when the separative I goes, then that reveals itself just as when the clouds go, sun reveals itself. So it's the ground of being itself, which is not to be made into another goal of realization. But when the false goes, truth reveals itself. So the whole point of inquiry and surrender is the exact same thing, which is to recognize again that there is no me, everything is done by you. If we surrender to God, then what we call God is that ground of being which is making everything happen, starting from the sense of me. So the very separative sense of me which rises can be offered back to the same source because that is where it's coming from. And all life, all experiences are all coming from the same source. So neither do the experiences belong to anyone, nor does the sense of me either. Everything is coming from the same source. So if we look at it as surrender to God, it is the exact same recognition that all of life, and including this apparent separative identity, is only an expression of the divine, and therefore I don't exist, only God exists. God alone is another way to see the same truth. So that's why either way, by recognizing the falsity of this separative experiencing structure called me, or by recognizing that everything happens from the source, from God, from the Supreme Being, and He alone, that alone makes all things happen, and therefore completely resting in that sense of surrender that I don't exist even now, only He exists. Then, either way, there is nobody to be liberated, there is nobody to seek anything, fear anything. There is just that which flows as everyone and everything. So that's the essence of both inquiry and surrender that gives freedom here and now, what is called as Jivan Mukti, freedom here and now. So that's the whole pointer of true satsang, is to recognize the freedom here and now, not postpone it to any future event, but recognize it here and now, and have the alert recognition every time this false I rises. So it is not therefore a fixed state of reaching somewhere, but it is an alert living presence. Because if you are not alert, again the same false I rises up and says, Either I want this or that, or I want liberation. All of this comes up. So, being very alert and vigilant, and thereby being free of this ghost called the me, and thereby letting life flow without any separation, that's freedom here and now.